All right, so we're gonna check out some basic entry-level screen presses. I don't want to price anything too expensive. This is just if you're thinking about getting into screen printing, don't want to spend a lot of money, just want a decent press to get started and are not sure what to go with. So first we're gonna start with these screen print clamps right here, and these are only $12, $11.99. This is a great way to spend virtually no money. So all you're getting here are these clamps. You're not getting anything else with this kit. You'd actually have to build this yourself, and all you really need is a palette. You can't do any type of multicolored printing. You can't do any underbase. This is just if you want a quick print, maybe a dark color ink with a light shirt, this would work perfectly. But anything that you would have to use a light ink on a dark shirt wouldn't work. But for $11.99, not bad. This is also something to consider if you don't have a press and you just want to practice your flood and stroke method. So when you get a real press, you're ready to go and already passed that learning curve. Next is this one color, one station press from Amazon for $99. So this is a press I always get asked about in the comments because it is so common, because it is so cheap. People always want to know, should I get this press? Is this something I should consider? And my answer is always no. Look, don't get me wrong. Entry-level press on a limited budget or just don't want to spend that money yet. It is an okay press, but let me tell you why I really don't like this press myself. First of all, it's a tabletop press. Now we're going to see a lot of tabletop presses in this video, but I really don't like tabletop presses because you're saving on the price of the screen press, but now you have to go out and get a dedicated table. Maybe you have one already, so that's not a problem, but you are going to have to anchor any tabletop press you buy down to the table. So it's going to have to be a wood table. So you're spending $100 on the press, you're spending another $100 to $150 on the table. So right there, you're in at 250 bucks. Can't really get in there that close, but see these little clamps right here? These clamps are notorious for moving all the time. I used to have a press like this when I first started. No matter if you're using wood screens or if you're using aluminum screens, they start loosening up and your registration just gets lost. Now this is a good press if you're doing dark colored ink on a light colored shirt because you're just hitting it one time. You really don't even need to flash it on the platen, which takes me to another cost, flash dryer or conveyor dryer, or both preferably. But we're not talking about that in this video. We're strictly talking about screen presses. Another thing with this press, these springs back here are really weak. So when you put your frame right here, you add your ink and you add your squeegee, your frame is going to come down here. It's going to be hanging right here. So it's going to be very difficult to load and unload your shirt, getting that shirt square because your frame is going to be right in your eyesight, in your eye line, right around your eye to your mouth area because it's going to be hanging low right here. So you kind of have to contour your neck out the way to get that shirt in there and make sure it's right. And there's no swing arm here, so you can't move that screen out the way. So you kind of just have to deal with it. So when I had my press like this, I had to put it on top of my head, the screen on top of my head when I load it and unload it. And it just became a pain, especially if you're doing a big order. Another reason I don't like this press, and I'm not just talking about this press in particular, I'm talking about a one-on-one, which is a one pallet, one arm press. If you're doing a big order, first of all, you can only do one color. But if you're just starting out, not a big deal because you don't want to really take on a multicolored job. But even if you're doing a multicolored job, maybe I want to say about 80% of the shirts I do are dark color garments on a light color ink, meaning there's going to be an underbase. And most of that time, that light color ink is white. So you want to make sure you have as vibrant a white as possible. So you're going to have that underbase. So what's going to happen, let's say you have an order of 25 shirts. Okay, you load your shirt, give it that first pass. Now you're going to put your flash dryer on the pallet to flash your shirt so you can give it another pass, right? You just added your underbase. So what's going to happen here after time, and maybe after about 15 to 20 prints, you're going to start noticing that tack not holding. So you're going to spray more tack and it's just going to start gumming up. And that's because this pallet is getting very hot because you're just adding heat on heat on heat and you're not giving it enough time to cool. So if you had a 2 or a 4 pallet press, you print your shirt, you swing it over to your flash dryer, and while it's flashing, you're loading and printing another shirt, and you're just doing that over and over. And by the time that first flash shirt comes back to you, that pallet's cool. So you don't have to worry about the shirt moving or lifting or gumming up because the pallet is too hot. So another thing I mentioned there is when you have a 4-on-4, you swing your pallet over, it's flashing, you're loading another shirt and printing it, which means you're wasting less time. And in the screen print game, time is money. So if you have to add an underbase to every shirt you're printing and you only have one pallet, you're adding the underbase, flashing, waiting about 10 to 20 seconds, depending on your flash dryer, removing the flash dryer, waiting for it to cool down, and then adding your top layer. So you're just adding maybe triple the time it's gonna take you to print a shirt, especially if you're doing it for profit and not just as a hobby or a craft or something like that. And it's really just gonna minimize your profit. So look, for $99, I wouldn't pick this one up. But check this out. Since I'm an Amazon creator partner, I have access to exclusive and limited deals. So that $99 press, I can offer it to you for $59.99 for a limited time. So for that price, it's worth picking up. So check it out in the link in my description. So let's go on to the next one. So this one's a variation of the one we just saw, but it's a 4-on-1, 4-head, 1 platen. I'm really not gonna get into this one too much because it's almost the same as the one we just covered. The only upside to this one versus the other one is it does have 4 heads. So this is like the one I had when I started. As I mentioned, these arms hang all the way down. So imagine you have 4 screens loaded with ink and 4 squeegees. It's just very difficult to maneuver around it. And this one's $139. So let's go to the next one. Same deal, but this one's a 4-on-4. Now this one, the carousel doesn't move, or there is no carousel, meaning the pallets don't move. You can see there, you also have to bolt this one down to a table. And I don't know why anybody would consider this one since the pallets don't move, because you would actually have to load every shirt, come back to every station. You have to actually move to every station, and that would get tiring after a while, especially if you're printing hundreds of shirts. If you're printing a dozen, 2 dozen shirts, it might not bother you that much, but once you start moving into production, you'll really have no use for this anymore. So as a starter press for $249, I'd probably miss this one. This next one is also from Amazon. This one's $1,000. This is a 6-on-6 press. Now that's not bad, especially for $1,000, but you have to make sure you know what you're getting when you plan to make a major purchase like this, because while a 6-on-6 does sound good, and these clamps are better than the ones we just saw on the other presses, the arms and the springs are virtually the same. Let's see if I can get a better picture of these springs here. These springs here are really weak. So if you're loaded with screens, loaded with ink, have your squeegees on all the frames, they're gonna be hanging down just because the springs are so weak. So one thing I forgot to mention about the 1-on-1, where is it? Is that the arm doesn't lock into place. So what I mean is this arm right here is constantly going to want to be going back up. So anytime you bring that screen down, you have to clamp it. Either get a clamp or clamp it with your hand. So you're gonna have to clamp the frame to the pallet. And with your other hand, which is not preferable, which is not ideal, is you're gonna have to squeegee your print with one hand. And if you're just starting out, you're just learning, you're definitely not gonna wanna do that because you're not gonna have the flood and stroke method down with 2 hands, let alone 1. This one right here, this 4-on-4, it kind of looks like they added a little holder. So this one might lock into place. Now that I'm looking at it, yeah, this little piece right here looks like it locks right there, but the 1-on-1 doesn't have that. Nope, definitely doesn't have that. 4-on-4 has it, and 4-on-1 has it. All right, we're done with the Amazon presses there. So this next one is from Lawson, and you can find this one at lawsonsp.com. This is a Scout manual screen print press. So Lawson is one of those brands that's been around for a while. So a few of the major press brands are gonna be from Vastex, Lawson, Hopkins, Workhorse, M&R, Hicks, and Raynar. So those are actually name brand products that you can find parts for, brands that have actually been around for a long time. So look, this one looks cool, right? And it's only $995. But wait, that's not what you're getting. For $995, you're getting a 1-color, 1-station press, and that is a tabletop model. So if you want a 4-on-4, it's gonna run you $2,500 and change, and that's still for the tabletop model. So if you want the base right here, that's gonna run you another $400. So this is that 1-on-1 right here, and for $995, I wouldn't spend that for a single head and single pallet press. It is name brand, it is made with high quality material, but for the price, and if you're just starting out, I wouldn't consider this press. So one thing that's pretty obvious that I want to point out right here is that you need to mount it to a table. Not only do you need to mount it to a table, you need to mount it off of a table. So you definitely need to make sure that you have a very sturdy base, because you see the table base right here, you can't mount it with the base, making it sturdy, making it stable, right? And the reason you really can't do that is because look at the clearance you have right here. Virtually no clearance from the table to your press. Let me see if I can get an under view of that. See that? You have all this under the table, so you can't fit a shirt under here if you have this table right here. So why should that even matter? Well, if you don't have a sturdy table and you're applying pressure to your print to your squeegee. That table can tilt over, and if you have inks and different stuff over here, all that stuff can just mess up your whole print. And you really don't want to be dealing with that every time you print a shirt. Which brings me to my next press here. So this one is $995. This next one I really like. Okay, so I'm gonna cut this video right here. This video has gone on way too long, and the second half is another 8 to 10 minutes. There is a part 2, so make sure you check that out. A lot more good presses in that video. So thanks for watching. Links in the description. Check out part 2. See you next time.